Amen. Dr. Brown.
Good evening. First, we have 16 section land by Mr. Mike Ainsworth.
Basically your 16 section, all your active contracts, okay? And those active contracts take you from January all the way through December. We basically set up an Excel spreadsheet, so we post all the tables on the spreadsheet, and do our very best to collect all those real in a timely manner. What I was going to do is we're going to show you a little bit about on this screen how we keep up with all the school land leases, and then open it up to questions whatever you may have.
Madam President, if I may. Good afternoon, Mr. Ainsworth. May I get a copy of that unless I overlooked it? Thank you.
Anybody else need, I got 2 more copies. Anybody else need a copy? So basically, when y'all first hired me, I took what was called the tax assessor's land roll, and I took that information along with what was on the Secretary of State's website, and we created a database for your school district. So this is just an example. Up at the top, you'll see the section, township, and range, leaseholder's information, the date the lease was granted, when it will expire, the number of acres, and the annual rental payment. And we have that set up for every school land lease that you're looking at in your spreadsheet. So the reason that's so important is basically this database, we can do what's called a query, and we could sort by all your agricultural leases, all your residential leases, commercial leases, contracts that are going to expire in 2021, any given year. So that took a little while to get to this stage, but I feel real good about where the school district is as far as knowing your active leases and monies and when they're going to expire. Something else I wanted to basically make you aware of, the auditors come in every school district, and they're always looking for, like, what's the revenue projection report, okay? The way you generate that revenue projection report is through this database. So as we do new contracts and those values change with each lease record, basically that program that I have will project those revenues years 2020 all the way through 2050. Basically, I generated that just yesterday. There was some new information that was put in, but roughly about $870,000 annually is what you make currently off your school land leases.
Say it one more time.
Around $870,000. Any questions about what I've gone over so far?
This list is not inclusive of residential, right?
That is actually all of your school land leases, including residential, commercial, every school land lease that's active. It's on that information right there. Now, you do have other school land leases. And this may be for another matter, or you want to discuss it today, more than welcome to. You have 99-year contracts that were done by the supervisors back in the 1940s, roughly about 1946, 47. Those leases are not shown on that spreadsheet or on that what you have in front of you because there's not an annual rental payment tied to those leases. Back in the 47, 46, when the supervisors were controlling the school lands, why they did this I have no idea, but they basically granted them for 99 years and had a one-time payment that was paid to the school. A lot of those payments were very, very minimal, $7.50 in that range. But until those leases expire or until the school district chooses to try to renegotiate those leases, you won't receive any compensation off that group of leases until one of those two things take place.
Is that a list that you can have generated for us? Are we privy to that as well?
I would gather that information from the Secretary of State's website, and I could generate what they have on record.
Okay.
I'm not saying how accurate that may be. There may be more pieces of property than what I hand over to you, but I will work on that for you.
Mr. Andrews, I have one question. Now the lease expirations, how are all of the leases, do they have a certain amount of time? What's the expiration date on
That's a
those
great
leases?
question. So depending on the land classification, depends on the term of the contract. So if you have a hunting and fishing lease, most of those hunting leases are 5-year contracts.
Okay.
You may have some that are 3 years just because when we opened up the bid, the monies may not have been exactly to your liking and you didn't grant a 5-year lease, you granted a 3-year lease. That handles the hunting and fishing classification. Your agricultural leases are typically a 5-year lease, and we've kind of learned that with those agricultural leases, when we come up to that expiration, so let me just kind of give you an example. That's a great example right there. Well, hold on one second. Let's do a sort real quick by 2021. Okay, so there's an agricultural lease. You'll see the section township range, the number of acres, the person who has it under contract, and you'll see it expires 12/31/2021. What I've been asking the local farmers, and most of them agree to this, they rather have the school district advertise those properties before December 31st. They want to know whether or not they're going to continue the lease for the next several years. So we would try to do that after they get their last crop off the ground, sometime in, say, October, or even before then, okay? But, so for instance, in this database, we can search, we can go to the next one. There's another lease that's going to expire, agricultural, okay? And there's a hunting lease that'll expire. We could just go on and on. But your residential leases are your longer term contracts, 25 years up to 40 years. And your commercial leases, which you don't have very many, would be the same 25 up to 40 years.
Thank you.
What's the process of renegotiating those residential leases?
That's a great
What's
question.
involved?
Right, that's a great question. So you have Braley Campsite is one of your sections. I believe it's 1621-1. They have 5-year adjustment periods to those contracts. So every 5th year that comes up, basically we get with the tax assessor's office. They'll give us the land valuation, and by law you take no less than 5%. Obviously, hopefully over time, the valuation of the piece of property goes up and there would be an increase in rent. And at that point in time, when there's an increase, I would present to you as a board a rent adjustment amendment, that you would approve as a board, and we would file that document in public record.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members?
Is that everything?
It's good.
Okay, well, y'all have my phone number if you ever need to call me about anything, or you have an email, just send me a text or shoot me an email.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Ainsworth. Dr. Brown.
Next, we have the Kirkland Group here to respond to any questions that the board may have, as well as provide information to the Board of Trustees.
How you doing? Good, and you? Thank you.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you. Who's in here?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am Carla Kirkland. I am the CEO of the Kirkland Group. And we are so excited to be able to come before you tonight to just talk to you about our service and answer the questions that we saw raised at the last board meeting. So I have with me Dr. Christina Green, and she will be leading the discussion tonight. So we'll have an opportunity where we'll try to present information to answer the questions that were raised. And then you will also have time to ask any questions that you would like. So thank you for this opportunity.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Okay. We've provided you with some handouts that we will talk through. The very first, you have a booklet of information here with the blue cover sheet, and that's the agenda, just to give you an idea of what we plan to talk about, and then of course, we'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have. So right behind the agenda, we provided you with some pages from the actual proposal that we presented in response to the RFP. And so I want to just talk you through some of that information. If you want to look at page 3 with me, we've just provided some general information about our company. We've provided a list of school districts that we've serviced over the last about 10 years or so, and then partnerships that we've had. And then moving to page 4, we start talking about our record of success, and we start with the 2019 state accountability data, where we provide you with the percentage of grade levels that we service that increased in English language arts and math. Then we provide that for 2018, the grade levels we serviced in ELA and math that where the proficiency increased. We also provided some data about the science schools that we serviced in that particular school year. And then for 2017 and 2016, we've provided a number of schools that increased from their lowest performance levels. And so then, moving on to page 11, this is the coaching cycle that we use, which is based on research. This is Jim Knight's work. So this is the teacher coaching model that we use, and we address those components with our teachers. Then these are the areas that we address. We customize our supports based on the needs of the schools, and then that drills down to the needs of the teachers. We address curriculum and instruction. We want to make sure that we're helping teachers to differentiate their instruction. We support them in implementing the district's instructional management system. We help them to develop engaging lessons so that students will be interactive in what they are learning. We help them plan their units of instruction. With assessment and data, and this is moving to page 13 if you want to follow along, we can help the teachers as they are developing their classroom assessments, as they are looking at the data and using that data to inform their instructional practices. And then we also help them to monitor student progress as they are looking at that data. And then on page 14, we talk about the use of resources. We want to make sure that teachers understand the resources that are out there, particularly the Department of Education resources that have been developed. So we show them, make sure that they're aware of those resources and show them how to use that within their lesson planning. And then we also help them with technology integration. We help them with their virtual lessons, whatever mode of instruction, whether it's face-to-face, hybrid, or solely virtual, we help them with that. And then on page 15, we talk about professional learning communities. We do encourage teachers to work together as a professional learning community, discussing strategies, discussing their lessons, looking at student work, and then looking at what adjustments they need to make to improve. And then with some of our districts, we also, in addition to working with teachers, we work directly with students. And that can be in a variety of ways. We can do that through boot camps. We can do that through tutoring or through remediation. We can customize the sessions, 2-hour, half-day, full-day. Sometimes we work with students within their class periods. And then we wanted to provide you with a list of the researchers that we have referenced throughout the proposal. We train all of our consultants, and we make sure that they are very familiar with the practices of these researchers as they are working with teachers. And then everything that we do, we want to make sure that it's aligned to the Mississippi College and Career Readiness Standards for those particular content areas. And so we talk about what that support would look like, ensuring that it's aligned to those standards. And then these are some strategies that are supported by evidence. Our consultants are using these strategies according to John Hattie. These strategies have an effect size of 0.40 or higher. So this means that there's evidence that these strategies can help improve instruction and improve student learning. And then on pages 23 and 24 of the proposal, we talk about our workflow and our timeline. And so we start with meeting with the district leaders, and then we look at the data, and then we create an action plan, implement that action plan. And so this is just a flow chart that shows that we do a lot of modeling, co-teaching, providing teachers with feedback, working with them during their lesson planning, looking at data throughout the process. We also like to follow the work, so we have project leads assigned to every school project, making sure that we're following up with consultants, making sure that we're holding them accountable and that they're meeting the goals of each school. We also, as we are monitoring and evaluating our effectiveness. We're looking at the number of days, we're looking at when our consultants are able to start, when the students will be testing. We're also looking at data that's being provided by the school, by the district, and then some of the formative assessment data that we're able to have access to. Now, behind the green cover sheet, we've provided you with some sample work reports. I believe at the last meeting there was a question about some of the feedback that comes out of this. And so this is a work report that we do after every visit. And you can see that we provide the objective for the day, the standards that were addressed, an overview of the work, whether or not any data was analyzed during the particular visit, and then if there are reasons for an increase, decrease, or no change in the data, areas of strength, opportunities for improvement, if there were any conferences, and then a place for any additional comments. So these work reports are submitted to the respective principal as well as to the district leaders. So that's just a sampling of the work reports. I believe we pulled 11 based on the work that was done October through December of 2020. And then we wanted to talk to you about some feedback that we have received from teachers in the district. And so this very large packet of information that you have, this is a printout of the evaluations. And so I apologize that some of the font is really, really small. These were PDF documents that we printed, and we worked to get it as large as we could. But we think you'll be able to get the gist of the feedback. These are the questions that are asked. Was the information of value? Was the session logically organized? Was the presenter knowledgeable, enthusiastic, positive? Did the presenter answer questions appropriately? Questions about participation. What information was of greatest value? How will it benefit the teacher in the school? What future training or follow-up would be helpful? And then just how they would rate the overall design as well as the delivery. Now, these are all of the sessions that were conducted between September and December of 2020. We provided, I think we had maybe 15 days of mathematics, 15 days of English language arts, and then we had some sessions on Canvas where we worked with grade level groups of teachers, pre-K through second grade, grades 3 through 5, 6 through 8, and then 9 through 12. And we tried to provide you with a cover sheet where those evaluations are organized according to those training sessions. And then I'm going back to your booklet of information. Behind the blue cover page, we provide you with some proficiency data points specifically for Greenwood. As you know, there's no state assessment data that's out there for the consolidated school district. So over the last, since the 15-16 school year, we provided you with those proficiency points so that you would have that in front of you. And then right after that, we've provided you with a summary of supports for the 18-19 school year. And the reason we wanted you to see that summary of supports is to get a sense of the number of days that we serviced a particular school, and then to see the teacher and the teacher by grade level that was serviced, and then we put the number of times that the consultant met with that particular teacher. Now, if you look at Bankston and the 71.5, and then you look at the number of times a consultant met with a teacher, it doesn't add up to be 71.5, because those other days we were working directly with students. And it may have been a small group of students that were identified. It could have been a class of students that were identified, but we were working directly with students on those days. And then the next thing we want to talk about, which is behind the red cover sheet, this is just a tentative plan of what the work could look like for the remainder of this school year. Dr. Pulley's office provided us with a list of teachers needing the most support. And so those are listed there for you, and they provided us with the number of days. So the 90 days that were mentioned in the RFP, those 90 days are being spread out across 10 schools and 23 teachers. And so we looked at the benchmark assessment data, and we drilled down to the standard, and these are the standards that were identified as that would need to be addressed again. So we're calling them remediation standards that we identified based on that particular data. So that gives you an idea about which teachers, which grade levels, and the total number of days. And Ms. Kirkland, you want to interject?
One of the questions I know that was asked was, did we have a plan? And the plan was in the proposal, but we went, after that meeting, we set up this plan by looking at your district data to see that, for instance, Ms. Harrington is going to get, for 7th grade ELA, 4.5 days. And those are the standards on that first row that we're going to cover with Ms. Harrington at Amanda Elsie Junior High. Notice we're only working with 2 schools. And I know the concern is, well, we need to see the district grow. And yes, we know that you want to see the district grow. So what we're doing is doing our part with the teachers that we're working with so that we can make sure that they grow. And so like you may even see sometimes where we're working 2 days with that teacher. We try to maximize that 2 days to make sure that we help them create a plan so that after those 2 days, they are moving forward. And I know one of the questions you asked, Ms. Milton, is you said you really wanted to hear from the teachers and what they had to say. So that's why we gave you that big sheet. But I want to tell you something else. Since that board meeting, we've had some of your teachers contacting our consultants saying, look, I don't know if you all will get to work in the district, but I need your help. Can you help me with this? So I want you to know that we've developed some relationships where the teachers are appreciating that information. I don't have the names with me tonight, of course, but if you'd like to speak with one of our consultants, we'd be glad to let you speak with Ms. Kemple or Mr. Kimball. Those were the 2 consultants who were in the district. So we just want you to know that we take the work and the days very seriously. When we provide those work reports to principals, we debrief with the principals, we debrief with the teachers so that we can make sure that they understand what we believe they should do to grow.
Now, towards the back of that same section, we've provided you with just a sample of a schedule. So I'm still behind the red cover sheet, and towards the back, behind the tentative plan with the list of teachers, there's a sample schedule for high school teachers, and then a sample schedule for junior high, and this is based on that junior high being on a block schedule. Now, we know that we have to be flexible, but this is based on the schedule that we received from the district office. We like to be with teachers while they are with students. And so that's why you see we want to make sure that we're observing, modeling, co-teaching, coaching teachers while they're with students. And then we also want to be with teachers during their planning period so that we can support them as they are planning their lessons. We did not put together a sample schedule for elementary because elementary has a different dynamic, and at some schools we may be serving 2 teachers by the same consultant, and so that's going to vary by school, and we would work with those principals to make sure that we schedule that accordingly. The bottom line is a full day constitutes about 8 hours, and we're going to make sure that if a consultant is scheduled to work a day, that consultant is putting in that time. And then we provided towards the back, that's the very last section behind the pink cover sheet, just some sample data cards. This is something that if the school doesn't have something already in place to track how students are doing, and this can be done in different ways. It can be done by content area. Then this is just an example of some ways that we help our teachers to keep track of the data and to be able to tell if their students are making progress. And then I believe at this point, this is just an example of some formative assessment data that we collected working with another district. To give you an example of some of the things that we're doing, if we work directly with students, we go in with a very short pretest, may only have 2 items, get a sense of what the students already know, and then we work with them, provide that tutoring or that remediation, and then we give a post-test, very, very short, and then the expectation is that we would have more students getting those 2 items correct after they have gone through that time of remediation on a particular standard. So we'll pause here to see what other questions you may have.
One question I would have is like the group of teachers that you have, I would have liked to have seen like beginning data to see where they are now, the progress that you have made. I would have liked to have seen that.
You mean data that was collected
Yeah, like
prior
when you
to
first-
us working
correct.
with those
And-
teachers?
And currently, where are they?
I see what you're saying.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am.
And the district has some data, so we always take a look at pre-test data that the district has. So what you're saying is, in our handout, you'd like to see this was their pre-test and this was their
Yeah,
post-test.
I want to see where you all are making progress.
I understand. And
Right.
so, let me tell you, one of the things that we could do, like for instance, Tristina, Dr. Green, if you'll back up where the standards are. We've already started that process to let you know that these are the standards that the teachers need to improve upon. So this would be our pre-test data. We pulled that from some district reports. So if we're allowed to work in the school district, what we would do is come back, like for instance, Bankston has with Kenya Griffin, we will work 6 days. So we would start with 6 RP2. The pre-test data is already determined, and we would create a plan and be able to show you some post-tests for 6 RP2. Then we'd move on to 6 NS2. And we'd probably cover maybe a standard per day. I don't know that we'd get to go through all of these because it depends on when we would return to the district. But we know that that's what you want, and we'd make sure that we do that.
Any other question, board members?
I did have a question. Kirkland, I was perusing through your proficiency data point.
Yes.
I only see 15, 16, and 16, 17. As I progressed through the pages, I only noticed a couple of years past 16, 17, and according to the proficiency data point, are these numbers based on the actual state test or is this district data?
That's based on the state test.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. We knew that whichever teachers we were working with, we had to make sure those teachers showed some growth so that the district could show some growth. Could you go back to those, some of those? And so that helps us to create a plan. Like for instance, to the growth data points. And those are great questions. So I want to show you something that we took a look at. If you'll go to that 3rd slide. All right, let's take a look at this. Here's your ELA map data, 15, 16, and then 16, 17. So if we compare the blue bars, that's 3rd grade one year, 3rd grade the next. But let's compare, look at the blue, 40.1, look at that kind of maroon, that's the same grade level the next year. They moved to 52.5. Look at the maroon for ELA math, 15-16. They were 35.9. Now they're orange on this chart, and they moved to 50. Take a look at the 15-16. Look at the orange on the left. Now on the right, they moved to 79.5, and that's your level 3 and above. So we did see some growth. And then in the areas where we didn't see growth, one of the things that I did is I went back to take a look at how many days did we work in that school? How many days did we work with the teacher? So I know you've spent a lot of money with Kirkland Group, but I assure you that we are working hard every day so that your data looks like this.
But would they have been in the same grade on that second year?
No, ma'am, they'll be in a different grade. That's why that blue 40.1, they were in 3rd grade there. And then 4th grade, where you see 52.5, that they grew for their 3 and above. The level 3 and above. So they're in a different
They were
grade.
tested on 3rd grade, but there they should have been tested on 4th grade. So how much different would those standards have been because of growth?
So the state measures growth.
Right.
So the state would take a look at those 3rd graders that were at 40.1, 3 and above, and show that they grew. They're now 52.5% of the students who are level 3 and above. Because right here, this blue this year is now this maroon this year. They were 3rd graders there, now they're 4th graders here. That 35.9 is 4th grade, 15-16. Now, you have 50% of your students who were 3 or greater. That orange, 50, is now, it moved to 3 and above, 79.3. Did I answer your question?
I see the growth, but I'm just wondering, they were 3rd grade here, and 3rd grade and 4th grade have different standards. Am I
They
correct?
do.
Okay.
They do.
So does the 3rd grade standards, do they piggyback? I know it's a kind of a building.
It's a
upon
continuum, yes.
Skill of
So you
skill.
have, the state gives you 3rd grade
Uh-huh.
standards, and then they're going to need those 3rd grade standards as they move to 4th grade. But the state determines those standards. We don't determine the standards, but the state is going to measure growth by that, whether the standards are the same or not.
Okay, see, I'm wondering, is this data reflective of the same standard? I know it's not. because if
No,
this is
3rd grade standards and 4th grade standards are different.
That's what,
They are different, but you still want students to be at level 3 or greater.
okay.
So the state is going to determine what grade the district will receive based on if they showed growth. Like if it was 40.1 over here and 29.1 over here, the state would not, you would not get the number of points
Okay.
that you need for the district to grow.
Accountability.
Okay.
You want to add anything?
I was just saying that's the way the accountability model is set
Yes,
up.
I'm familiar with it.
Did that help a little bit?
Indeed. Thank you.
Certainly want to answer your question.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Ms. Kirkland, what about with our subject area testing?
Okay. So let's take a look at what we did with subject areas. Okay. So we worked at Greenwood High, and for Algebra 1 is your blue. So in 16-17, 42.4% of your students in Algebra 1 were 3 or greater. And that shows that they passed the assessment. And then the next year, they increased to 79.1% of the class. Of all the students tested are now in 17-18, they were level 3 or above. So we did see some growth there. As the test has evolved, we've learned a whole lot about that test. So we began to remediate earlier. And we set up remediation plans, And you had some strong Algebra 1 teachers. And we were able to work closely with them. They were remediating, we were remediating, just creating plans. Then take a look at your level 4 and above. 10.4, 16, 17 moved up to 34.2%. 14.7% in English 2 moved up to 23.9. Then look at the biology one. It went from 48.2% of the students 4 and above to 65.9. So we pay close attention to this data. We work with retesters. So let's say a student fails the test. They're in those remediation sessions as well. We work closely with Dr. Brown. We work closely with Dr. Pulley. We work closely with the principals just to make sure that we are tracking children to help them grow.
Madam President, if I may, Ms. Kirkland, thank you all for coming. But my question is, I noticed a lot of the data that you presented has dealt with what I assume was the public school system, what was the public school system. Do you have any data as it pertains to what was the county school system here? Because that's a different population of students.
You're exactly right. So here's what happened, and I have that. I don't have my phone with me, but okay. Yeah, can you go get my phone? So here's what we did. The first year that the schools were consolidated, first of all, we were not a vendor for the Leflore County School District. It's been years. So that was the first year. Then the pandemic happened. So we were in the district, we worked with some of your schools, and we have that data. I think that's 1920. Did I say that right? Did the pandemic happen? Okay. Okay. Amanda Elsie High School, we had 10 days of ELA, 9 days of math, 5 days of science. And as you know, there were no state assessments. Amanda Elsie Junior High School, 10, 5, and 6. So we had 5 days of math, 10 days of ELA, 6 days of science. Then East Elementary, we had 12 days of ELA, we had 2 days of science. And we didn't work all of those. That was last year, and right before the pandemic hit. And we worked a few days, and then we mainly started working in January. That's when the contract was approved and when we were able to get in the schools.
So the majority of that work was done over in the Greenwood area?
Yes, sir.
And nothing in the
It was prior to
the
years
period.
before, because we were the vendor. Let me tell you, we were at Leflore County Elementary School. We had 6 days of ELA. We had 3 days of science. At Leflore County High School, we had 14 days of ELA, 9 days of math, 7 days of science. We were not able to complete all of those days.
Thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Hope that was helpful and I answered your question.
Ms. Kirkland, I was wondering, what is the approach of your group in trying to develop the abstract thinking and the concepts, both for the teacher and the students?
So we have a plan where we go in and we work with the teachers and we co-teach. So first of all, we like to observe the teacher. And we look at their practices. Then we create a plan. We meet with them during their planning period, and we plan an opportunity we plan a lesson, and then we co-teach the next time. And we bring in that type of abstract thinking or concrete thinking, whatever it is that we see that they need support with. We create a plan and we model it first period. We co-teach second period. We watch them to teach it third period. So we have a I do, and I do, you do, we do approach. And we help them develop the lessons in line with the standard. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I have a concern overall with the level of just knowledge versus teaching concepts and teaching so that reasoning is developed in the students.
You want to address that?
So we want to make sure that teachers are able to address the rigor of the standards, and so they are providing a lot of hands-on types of strategies with the students so that they can develop that conceptual understanding. So for example, with fractions, a lot of times teachers are teaching students these steps for adding and subtracting fractions, multiplying and dividing fractions, but a lot of times students are confused. Why do I need the same denominator when I'm adding and subtracting fractions, but when I get over here to multiplication and division, I don't need the same denominator? So we provide them with manipulatives. In this virtual space, we're helping them have lessons that are interactive so that they can see that when I'm adding and subtracting these fractions, in order to add those or subtract those, I have to have the same denominator. So we have these pictures and we have different models, virtual manipulatives, to help them with that conceptual understanding. And if they can grasp it looking at the concrete, then they're able to transfer that over. So that's just one example on the math side that I can use off the spot to try to answer your question. Did that help?
It helped, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You need any more clarification?
Not right now. Thank you, though.
Okay. And we want you to know that if allowed to work in the school district, we're willing to come back to other board meetings. We do that all the time. So if you need us to come back to show you data, to talk about what we're doing, we would enjoy doing that. We certainly want to share any information and of the work we're doing.
I think that would be a great idea to come back maybe and keep us abreast
Okay.
of improvements that you're seeing, because we do realize that we have quite a few first-year teachers,
Yes.
and it's difficult. So if some way, somehow, you can provide us with some, I don't know, no, I wouldn't say weekly reports or some type of updates, to be able to show us the improvements that you all are seeing.
So if approved, we can propose an update schedule, and we can also propose a template so that you can see if the information would be organized in a way that you would prefer. That's something that we can work with Dr. Brown and Dr. Pulley on, and then you can let us know if that will meet your pleasure.
And that would include the good and the bad.
Absolutely. And
If you look at those work reports, what you will notice is that we have recommendations, but we also have areas of improvement. So even this data that you see, it may look like we only showed the good, but if you look at some of these charts, there may have been one or two times where the chart did not grow. So what we did is that's why we wanted to tell you, well, we were only at that school this many days. So we're not laying the blame, but then sometimes, you know, there are times when the teachers may not be as receptive. And when that happens, we work closely with Dr. Pulley, we work closely with the principals, we work closely with Dr. Brown, so we can just make sure that that changes.
And Madam President, if I may, Ms. Kirkland, I tend to think a little different. I have a science background. So not only am I concerned about, or interested rather, in improvements, but I would like to know what challenges do you see or obstacles that you face? Because as a board, if there are some things that we can do internally to help or support student improvement or academic success, we need to know about that so that we can aid you.
We'll be glad to share that. Let me tell you what we're doing. We're sharing that with Dr. Pulley and Dr. Brown. For instance, I'll give you an example. We worked with some of your teachers where we were observing their classes virtually. Well, one day we had a few teachers who wouldn't let the consultant in the room, wouldn't admit them. So what we did is we didn't wait until the end of the day. We contacted Dr. Pulley, we contacted Ms. Cation, and we were in those classrooms. We weren't in at the beginning of the period, but we were in towards the, you know, as soon as Dr. Pulley, I remember one day, one thing he did is he said, well, I'm able to get in there. And we said, it's probably because you're the assistant superintendent. But right after that, when we tried to get in, we could get in. So that's just one issue that I'm telling you that we were able to resolve. So I didn't want to come today like we're doing everything right. But I do want you to know we're doing everything we can to help your teachers be successful. And when we run across issues, we're addressing them right then. We contact the principals. We let the teachers know, look, we're trying to get in the room.
Okay, we appreciate you coming, and one thing I've heard Dr. Brown say before, that we like to grow our own teachers.
Yes.
So, in that matter of fact, is what I'm saying is sometimes it's hard, because I'm a former teacher,
Yes.
that when someone comes in over you, it could be intimidating. So I'm just saying, as a person
Yes.
who has gone through that, maybe you can find some ways and strategies to make them feel comfortable as well, because I've been a teacher before.
Thank you. We run across that sometimes if it's a first-year teacher, but since we've had relationships with the teachers, we haven't had that problem very much. And if we do, and you know, sometimes there's a personality conflict, we've had to change consultants.
And the position that we have is, it's a partnership, and we try to help the teacher see that we're right in there with him or her. And we want the teacher to feel comfortable, not see us in an evaluative type of role, but we're there as a partner to help. Because if the teacher is successful, then we're successful.
I just want to share one more thing. I'm glad you brought that up. We are not there to evaluate the teachers. So sometimes some of the conversations we have with the teachers and we share with the principals, even when we come back, we're not going to give you names, because we want the teachers to feel like they can trust us. We had this private conversation that you need to improve here, so we won't give you a name. We'll just maybe give you an overall listing of some issues we're having. But I do want you to know we will have spoken with the teacher, we will have spoken to the principal, we will have spoken to Ms. Cation, we will have spoken to Dr. Pooley, and get that information to Dr. Brown. Thank you all for allowing us to come in.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
For allowing us to speak to you. And this is February, so if you can let us know when you'd like for us to come back. I know, well, we're almost in February. So March is probably, toward the end of March or early April is probably a good time for us to come back and talk to you about what we're seeing. But if you want us to come back March, we will. You just let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Brown.
Next, we have bond presentations.
Attorney Pulley.
I think the board wanted to hear from certain architects that are in the room, and I believe all three are here. And at the board's discretion, I know we have Mr. Gary Bailey, who's here. We have Gigi Ferguson, who's here. We also have Major Designs, who are here, who have come before us before. So at whichever order the board would like them to come, they could.
Who lives the farthest? Who came the farthest?
Who came before?
The farthest in miles. Are they all from Jackson?
I believe the furthest might be Major Design.
Okay, we'll hear Major Design first so they can get back on the road.
Good afternoon.
We're ready. Oh, we thought you would come to make just like a little small presentation, but at this time, board members, the floor is open if you have any questions.
Madam President, if I may?
Yes.
I do know that I did, well, I think, in collaboration with Ms. Lewis, I had some questions about projects that you all may have initiated and finished, completely, and I do know that you did send an email, regarding such, and I believe I shared it with the board members, but we have one new board member who was not here at that time, so if you'll just touch on that, I think that'll be some good information to have.
Some of the projects that we completed is, for instance, down in Chalkford, Indians, we just wrapped up phase 1 of it. It's a pre-K facility. It's actually 2 of them, and it ended up being about 13,000.
Can you speak a little loudly?
13,500 square feet each. They were located in Pearl River and Standing Pine. Currently working at Kahoma Community College. We're doing a student activity center there, and also renovating Curry Hall, which is the business hall for their college. And actually, we're also getting started on a contract at Mississippi Valley State University doing the rehab of their aquatic center. And some schools that we've done in the past with previous firms is actually actually Oklahoma School District. We had a bond issue with them. We actually did HVA upgrades there and a football field house, and that's with the current firm. Holmes County, we did a athletic project there, stadium upgrades and concessions, things like that. Jackson Public School District, we've done roof replacement projects for the last about 3 years for them as well. And we're currently in the Newton School District doing some roof replacement and HVAC work for their district.
And you're based out of where?
Columbus, Mississippi.
Columbus.
And that's just a few of the that's just a few of the projects that we've completed. In addition to that, we were actually told that y'all probably would just have some questions, but in addition to that, we did just go ahead and work up some ideas about different things, and I'll just start down here and just kind of run through it real quick.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
May just kind of run through this. Some of the things that we had looked at, I think in the previous presentation that we presented to you, we were told that the number was around 60. And so we kind of looked at those options, which would be basically in the first row of numbers up there. The second row of numbers are again at the 60, so we have those options. And I can go through each one if you would like, but the ones that we were told that you probably were more so looking at or leaning towards would be the 40. So what we actually looked at on that is the bottom row right there. And so basically we looked at looked at a new high school, and then we looked at what would be the option of using, basically keep the middle school and add the 300 kids, and then look at basically Greenwood High School and basically doing an addition onto it and making it almost like an upper elementary, and then using your local elementaries. So the kids could actually still walk to school. And I think that was something that was a little bit important to the community, and having those elementary schools still in the community where they could kind of walk to those elementary schools. And so basically all of that would be less than your 40 million at the bottom. The next option was if you were interested in looking at a new upper elementary, and then still renovating the middle school, and then basically keeping the students at the high school and just adding on to that to accommodate the additional students, and then again using the local elementaries as your lower elementary under that approach. And then option number 11 was basically a combine where you would have your upper elementary and lower elementary combined together, and then you would still make the renovations to the middle school, and then you could actually use your high school as basically keep it as is and just add to it. That'll be a little bit more than the 40, but that is another option for you. All those other items, all those other options above, that's across the top and then the middle, they were all at the 60. So we wanted to be able to just try to give you some options for you to look at and kind of think about.
Any question, board member? No question? Okay, thank you all so much for coming. Ferguson?
My name is Eugene Kirkland. Am I hearing you?
Yes.
I couldn't get the microphone very well. My name is Eugene Ferguson. I'm president of Ferguson Associates Architecture. I appreciate you inviting me here tonight. I want to let you know that we were the architecture firm, and we were right in the middle of managing a $55 million bond issue for Hines County School District. In order to keep this short, basically, I've come here to answer any questions you may have. Where you've been, where you're going, or where you want to go. I'm here for your questions.
And where are you based out of?
I'm based out of Jackson, Mississippi.
You out of Jackson.
Madam President, if I may.
Go ahead, Mr.
Mr.
Bailey.
Ferguson, have you had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Johnson to just get an idea of what the needs of the district are?
I really haven't.
Okay.
I just got into this about a week ago.
Okay.
I'm kind of running the line.
Oh, understood. Well, if it's okay, I would suggest maybe speaking with Mr. Johnson, because he has this superior wish list that we cannot afford. But he certainly has an idea of where the district needs to go, as well as the needs of the district based on facility assessment studies that have been completed in the past.
So you have done facility
Mr. Johnson, that's correct?
Okay.
And we're in bad shape.
Well, that's one thing we did for Hines County School District, is we prioritize all their needs, whether from bathroom replacements, the roof replacements, the performing arts facility. We were able to take all that information and budget it out, and carry that budget before bonding issue and all the way through where we are now.
And outside of Hines, have you had any other experience with any other school districts?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, right now, we're doing a new junior high for Jackson Prep. That's the only school we're doing right now.
So if you can collaborate with Mr. Johnson, and maybe we can call you Tuesday, or you can call in and we can ask you any questions on our board meeting. Correct. All right, you can get with Mr. Johnson if you don't mind. Mr. Bailey?
In addition to that, if there are any handouts or any additional information to give forward to Mr. Johnson so that we can receive it?
Okay,
That would be great.
thank you. Mr. Gary Bailey. Good evening, Mr. Bailey.
I think so.
Y'all know a good bit about me, but I'm going to give you a short overview of my experience as an architect that specializes in schools. And then we'll talk about your district some more. We've had some conversations about your district's needs and costs. The shortest version I can tell you is that this is my 41st year of designing schools in Mississippi. I don't do churches. I don't do office buildings. I don't do universities. And I sure don't do houses. I do schools, K through 12 schools. My whole career is built around it. 1979, my first school was South Vanilla Junior High School. Today, I'm working in South Vanilla School. First high school I did was Tupelo High School, and then Parham High School, Tishomingo, and Columbus. I've been blessed richly by this state. I've dedicated my life to public education. 1.4 billion, not million, but billion dollars worth of schools I've done in the last 12 years of my career. Over 60% of the new schools in the state of Mississippi I've been blessed to design. From the Gulf Coast to DeSoto County, I've done 16 brand new schools in DeSoto County. The most economical buildings you're going to find in the state of Mississippi are in DeSoto County. Number one, because they're tight. Number two, because they were growing so fast, they had to be economical. They were growing 1,500 students a year at that time. So I'll say that to say that I've done a lot of schools, and I can overwhelm you with photographs of beautiful schools. We're currently doing $150 million worth in Vicksburg, Warren. 2 major high school projects and 1 new academy renovation, and a lot of additions and renovations. We've done half of Rankin County's $200 million bond issue, and that's major work at Brandon High School, Gilhatchee, and Puckett, and many of their elementary schools. We're currently under construction in Leland, because the small schools are just as important as the big ones. It's a $6.9 million project. That's just as important to me as Vicksburg Warren is. They've got a board meeting right now that I'm missing because I'm here. Jesse King would tell you that I love his kids. This is not a game for me. It's not a job for me. It's the passion of my heart. I own an educational consulting company because I believe in education. It's what drives our entire democracy. We're a better country because we invest in our children. And I learned early on that the quality of building is important. The quality of instruction is far more important. But if I design a building that allows teachers and leaders to dream, to be excited about coming to school, it is a radical transformation of their thought process. I've gone back and talked to the janitors, talked to the principals, and said, did it make a difference? I can take you to Vicksburg right now, Vicksburg High School, the black school, Warren Central, the white school. Together they think they're all the same now. They're not. People over the years have not treated Vicksburg the way they treated Warren Central. I encourage you to go ask Jim Sturgis or ask Coach, people who believe in Vicksburg High School that we make a difference. It has changed the attitude of the children. They love coming to school because they are important. And the things that we do to design buildings and the environment for education is extremely important, and I don't take it lightly. I live in the dream designing schools. When I go on vacation, I'm sitting in a cocktail area sketching on a napkin of the current school that I'm working on. Happens to be in Laurel, Mississippi, got destroyed by tornado, Noah Davis Elementary School. A school that the previous board had closed, and the current superintendent said, we've got to build back into this poor community. We've got to invest in this community. And it's insurance money, so they're able to rebuild that school with insurance. But what Tory Watt said, Dr. Watt said, is, why can't we have what other people have? And the answer was real simple, you should. And she said, I want my kids to have what Chad Shealy's kids have in this created. And we're looking at building an elementary school, third-grade elementary school, that's based around it's really more like a kids museum. And everything that they are doing in their academic program will be exploratory programs. And it's based on a kids museum that I saw in San Francisco that teaches kids not just data, not just content, but that abstract thinking that you were talking about earlier, is that you have to remember what you learned. And the building is a teaching tool in which to do that. So what we do matters, and it matters a lot. Completing facility studies right now in Cleveland, we're looking at a $40 million bond issue. In Starkville, looking at a $45 million bond issue. Simpson County, looking at a $33 million bond issue. This is what I do. And I humbly say that I'm very thankful for what I do. Last time we met here with you to talk about your school, we were talking about costs in elementary schools and high schools, and et cetera, et cetera. I have done an update, and I don't know if it was sent to you all or not.
It was, and we were very pleased.
I'm handing it to you again. I want to talk about a couple of items. The primary reason I did the update was not to tell you what you wanted to hear. But I think you know me well enough to know that I'm not just going to spit out something to make you smile. I think I'm going to tell you the truth. Is that we've been involved in a school that came in more economical. And so I revised some estimates to look at an alternative to how it might work for your school district. And I'm going to give you the caveat up front that school is a simple school. It's not luxurious, nor should it be luxurious. It's a good school building. If you start construction. It was based around a budget of a little over $200 a square foot. The schools in Vicksburg and Warren are $235 a square foot, and they're different. There's a difference between 235 and 205, which is what I'm basing that on, and it's content. You control costs by only two items. And I know these other guys, and I have highest respect for these gentlemen, by the way, they're all wonderful, wonderful architects, is that size and quality are the only two things you control cost for. So I could sit up here and tell you you can have an elementary school for, 100,000 square feet, and it would be wonderful. But would it meet the educational needs of your school district? At this point in your discussion, size is relative to what you want in that building. Size of classrooms, size of media center, size of PE spaces, all of those are a process. And I base my numbers on realistic schools that I have done that I believe are successful for education. For example, at the top, option one, the new elementary pre-K through 2, is based on 114,000 square feet. Well, I guarantee you that 114,000 square feet would be wonderful educational. It would have the components that you need for special ed kids, and for kids that are in wheelchairs, and kids that are gifted, and science labs, and all of the things that need to be in that school, because I know what I'm doing. This is what I do. The cost per square foot is relative to the design of the building you're interested in. And if you're interested in a simpler building, which there's nothing wrong with that, that's what these numbers are based on. Okay? So I showed you options for a K2, a 3-6, additions to the middle school. That's basically option one. I've looked at option 2, which was a combined pre-K through 6 elementary school. These are all consolidated new schools. Obviously, a much bigger school, still adding on to the middle school. I looked at just a pre-K through 4 elementary school to show different sizes of schools. I'm going to stop right here before I talk about high schools so we can give you some commentary that you didn't ask for. You're interested in consolidating these schools in your community, just like you have in your district. And it's the hardest challenge you're going to do. You know your communities are not the same. They come from different places, different successes, different cultures. And that's a hard, hard thing to do. Though your administration, who I respect more than anybody I know, would love to see new elementary schools, I do not know if that is what is best for you right now. That's just my humble opinion. Here's why. If you consolidate your elementary schools right now, and you spend every cent you can in a bond issue by law, school option has everything to do with what's in it. This is a 9 through 12, 166,000 square foot building that I promise you will be a successful academic high school from a functional point of view. It'll have all the components that needs to be in it. Will it be luxurious at that cost? No. Will it be adequate? Yeah. It would be very adequate. It would be at a level very similar to what we've been able to do in Suffolk County. But it wouldn't be the, oh my God, image of Vicksburg High School or their Academy of Innovation. It would be a simpler building. The challenge that you have with high schools, and again, I know you're considered other architects, so, and that's fine. You know, if you don't need me, that's perfectly okay. The challenge that you have is your site in which you put that high school, because it drives cost. And if you go into a raw piece of dirt anywhere outside of an established piece of ground that's already got utilities and roads on it, you're going to pay a premium. And I listed it down at the bottom. Roughly $6 million to build entry roads and utilities for a site that is not developed. And that's going to end up busting that budget. Unless you pick a piece of land that already has those. And I know that's controversial, where you put a new high school. I get that. You all come from different places in the city and the county, and ultimately, you all have to decide what's best for your district. And I can sit up here and pontificate all day long, but ultimately it's your decision, and I can only give you my advice. I've gone to the effort, no one asked me to do it, of looking at what would it take to get the most economical consolidated schools in this district. And the most economical way to do that is to build just west of the vocational school at Greenwood High School, to build a new high school there. I've been looking at it for 20 years now, as I drive down Highway 82. I designed the middle school back behind me. So I'm obviously looking at work that I have done, but I'm looking at what could be facing that highway, and the pride that can be generated in this entire community by putting your best foot forward for everyone to see, and not hiding it behind the lower trees or whatever. That most economical option would be either 9 through 12 or 10 through 12, new school, right adjacent to your vocational school, so you integrate your vocational programs into career academies so that you got the option to do career academies and integrate those vocational kids into an academic program, which is where high schools are going in the future, in my opinion. If you build somewhere else, you're going to bust those kids to vocational school. You'll have trouble getting them interest in vocational programs. I was one of those kids. I was in vocational school. And because I was at South Haven High School and the vocational school was adjacent, I walked from 4th period to 5th period to take my vocational class. I never left the site. If I had had to get on a bus, my little prissy self wouldn't have done it. It's an extra effort that some kids are not going to do. So that adjacency is positive. Here's the other positive, is that Greenwood High School, it has plenty of issues, just like your other schools do building-wise, but it is large, it is somewhat centrally located in your county. I've got the drawings done, I know what the map looks like, I know the mileage from point A to point B, and nobody's central. You can't find a central point because of transportation. You have 2 major highways. People are going to go to school via 2 major highways and then the tributaries that can lead to that. So Greenwood High School has a lot of square footage that can be used in a couple of different ways. So here's the options. You build a 9 through 12 new high school, take Greenwood High School and make it the consolidated 7th and 8th grade school. Middle schools work wonderful at old high schools because they've got labs and they've got gyms and locker rooms. And then take the middle school, which is your newest building, and make it a consolidated 5th and 6th grade school. So that in your local communities, everybody goes to their pre-K through 4 elementary school, and they come together in the 5th grade, all within one contiguous point. They go by it every day, and those 5th and 6th graders, when they're riding the bus, they're looking at that new high school and saying, that's where I'm going. That's where I want to be. And same thing for middle school kids. You also have the option, if, depending on how you want to prioritize cost, of doing a 10 through 12 high school and a 9th grade then still keep the middle school across the street. The advantage of that is that the existing facilities at Greenwood High School, supplemented with the new school, would give you more capacity. You could easily have 2 gyms without building 2. You fix one, you got to build a new one. Performance, new gym. You have some areas that could work very easily for expanded athletics. But it's all about capacity and utilizing buildings as efficiently as possible. In all of that, if you do any of that level of consolidation, you're obviously able to reduce the number of buildings you have in the district. As I discussed with you before, you're going to save roughly $300,000 per school by phasing those buildings out, so per year forever. And you either choose to use that money for one of 2 things: improve education or improve buildings, because those existing elementary schools still have needs. Very quickly, I'm going to stop and answer questions, but as you're well aware, the current SO2 funds that have been approved and signed are $17 million for years. And you can only use them for one of 2 things: deal with learning loss, which is the most important thing in my life, helping those kids that have not had adequate education, soon to be 18 months. Or you can do it to improve air quality in existing buildings. I'm recommending that people look at a balance of that, because you have a good federal fund budget every year for improving academics, to supplement that to do some of the summer programs that I know you're going to want to do to catch your kids up and accelerate them. But spend some of that money as investment in mechanical. If you look at the option I talked about, you could spend it at that high school and redo the mechanical systems at that high school without spending any bond money. Those are ideas. The facts that I've given you here, with the caveats that I've given you, is that we would have to make decisions together. We would have to set priorities together. But if you dwell on those issues, you miss the point. I want us to dream together. I want us to talk about kids together and have kids learn. I want to talk with your administrators about the spaces that you can create to stimulate learning. And so that your kids deserve what every other kid in the state deserves. Our why, we spend a lot of time in daily education group talking about why we exist, is to improve the lives of all children. If I'm not doing that, then I have failed. If you do not want to do that, then I'm probably not your own. I'm 64 years old and not quit if I want to. I love what I do. I want to do it. Questions?
Madam President. Mr. Bailey, thank you, very informative. But you kind of mentioned something that concerns me. As I understand it, you have to have 60% of a vote to pass a bond issue.
Yes, sir.
Of
those who vote.
Oh, correct. So I'm led to believe one of those options that you gave us will not garner 60% of the vote.
I get that.
So I think we're going to have to look at some other ways in which we can get the support from the overall community, or, as you said, those persons who will actually vote. But again, I think there are some great ideas that we could definitely look at.
Because no one has discussed it. And y'all probably have, but it has not been a meeting back then. It's just a option. Other questions?
The new estimates look better than the old ones, I will say that.
Great presentation.
Thank you. One other minor thing is you're well aware that the new president is proposing a major additional infusion of funds, currently granted twice what the current plan is. So it's somewhat of a safety valve to help fix some of your other buildings, assuming it gets funded and voted on. So it's the right spot that we should move forward. Y'all know where I am.
We thank you. Dr. Brown.
Next, we have a district's accountability dashboard document that we will create each semester and share with the public. Dr. Pulley.
Thank you.
Good evening. What you see before you is the 2020-2021 Accountability Dashboard. And we created this as a district for it to serve as a tool, a data tool that we will use to drive productivity and accountability for each of our district's goals. We know on last week our state superintendent did mention that this, in her opinion, this would be a year of grace, and we would kind of hold harm some of the accountability pieces as relates to state testing. But we want you all to know that our communication to our staff is that we're continuing to hold everyone accountable. We're holding ourselves accountable for what's going on a daily basis. So this accountability dashboard displays everything from the demographics, benchmark data, school safety checks, even the number of parent meetings that we have held up to this point. We have shared this dashboard with our principals, and we are, they're working now to create individual accountability dashboards for each school. So it's trickling down, and we're going to use this to monitor our data. Of course, this is not all of the data, but we want to make sure that we have a one-sheet snapshot of our district so that we can continue to monitor each one of our district's goals. And we want to make sure that we're being as transparent as possible, but we also use it to be sure that, hey, we're not just reciting our district's mission, vision, goals, but we're actually working to address each of those.
Next, we have COVID-19 updates. Mr. Johnson.
Good evening. What you have before you is a group of reports pulled. The first report on page 5 is the COVID-19 report that Mississippi Department of Health sends out every Wednesday. You have the information from the previous week. I have you to update information from last week on Tuesday. But if you go through, you have a couple of other reports. You can see on the next page you have the bed utilization for our local hospital, and followed by the next page shows the high case rate and where we rank right now as a county. And then the final report shows the vaccination reporting from statewide, as well as the Leflore County's COVID-19 snapshot. If you will notice on that page, which is page 10, the test positivity rate, which is in red, is 27% currently as of January the 16th.
Next, we have school reopening updates. We do have a district reopening plan. We are continuing to monitor the COVID-19 numbers, not just in Leflore County, but also just worldwide or in the United States. We're still charting the COVID cases in the district. Although our students are not in the physical buildings, we still have faculty and staff who have reported and who are reporting that they are coming into contact with those who have contracted the virus, as well as we have individuals who themselves have contracted the virus. But what we wanted to do was to stay true to our reopening plan and continue to revisit, and we have a hybrid schedule. It's a plan for students in the event that we do open the physical buildings for students. This is a plan which includes the number of students whose parents did choose for them to come back, and how we plan to provide spaces for instruction for those students. So Ms. Flowers just passed some sample schedules, and I will yield to Dr. Pulley as he goes through our hybrid schedule plan for students.
With the hybrid schedule, our principals would assign students particular days to attend school. So Group 1 would attend on Monday and Wednesday. Group 2 would attend on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And while there, students would not change classes, and that's as indicated in our original reopening plan. They would not change classes. We would have adequate staff there to facilitate learning and to supervise students. Also, the number of staff members present would depend on the total number of students present on their campus. Also, our safety protocols would be followed. We would ask our students to bring their Chromebook so that they can continue, even though they will be in the building physically. We know that our teachers will still have to provide virtual instruction for those who are not present, so many of the assignments will still be conducted on the computer. The sample scheduling that you see, there's one elementary sample schedule, one middle, and one high school. And this is just to show you what it would look like so that you'll know pretty much how we're planning on doing this. And one reason why we wanted to begin this way is that if we know at the end of the year that we're going to have to take state assessments. That's one thing. We know that our students are going to have to take them inside of the building. So when we do begin, whenever we do begin, this plan will help us to start slowly and ease into what our original reopening plan is. And so also what it would do, it would continue to limit the number of people inside of the buildings. So the way our principals have designed it is that, for example, if I'm a teacher, I may, depending on what school I'm in, depending on the number of faculty, I may be on the campus helping to facilitate that one day a week. Of course, I'm going to continue to teach my students and all of that, but we created it as similar to what we would do with a duty schedule, so that one, we would have enough students on the campus, but then two, we would have adequate faculty there to supervise and facilitate instruction. And then as we get closer to the administering of state tests, when of course more students will have to be in the building, then we would ease into our plans that we originally had, that we originally set for reopening, which would take us into, I know our state test schedule, the window is actually March 29th through May 14th. And so we're wanting to be proactive in our plans. If we start in these plans early and then ease into that, then we'll know exactly, hey, we can work out any kinks that we may have. So when we do get to the point where we have to have more and more students present to test, then we'll have everything worked out and know exactly how those processes will work.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
So now you know it's recommended that we wear 2 masks. So will masks be available at school for students and staff just in case someone might show up and not have?
Yes, we have those available now.
Madam President, I have a question. Dr. Fullingham, I do see the reopening plan. I perused the packet, but I'm wondering, have we looked at, as a district, total cost? It would cost total district cost to reopen on said days for the students that have opted in to coming to face-to-face, school face-to-face. Have we looked at maybe tentative total cost?
That would be, a cost for them to come inside of the building?
Right. So for instance, we have an example here, and it's only 69 students. So have we looked at what it will cost us to? I'm just saying this. Do we know if this will be cost efficient?
Now, that's something that I have not, but Dr. Brown.
I think the additional cost that we don't have right now would be the busing. most of the schools are trying to find locations that are just a wide location so that they won't use all of their buildings. And I'll go with David's first. The kindergarten group, they only have 15 kindergartners. And so they'll spread them out in the library as well as use the buildings that are adjacent to that library if needed. But the additional cost would come with transportation, I know, but that's a good question and we'll look into it. I know transportation would be an additional cost.
But somebody's in the school all day anyway, right?
Yes, ma'am, the schools are open all day.
And were those, busing, that was something that was already into the budget, right? So it shouldn't be anything additional.
But the difference is we can transport fewer students now. So it'll have to be multiple buses going to schools because they still have the social distancing on buses.
Have you all gathered any information as to whether or not some parents would want to drop their children off and pick them up?
Yes, ma'am. I think that was communicated to Mr. Johnson and some of the principals that there are some of the parents who want to drop their kids off. And what we'll do is we can get a list of those children, just highlight their names, but it's still not guaranteed that they will drop them off.
Would this interfere with the food, with them distributing food every day?
Mr. Johnson and Ms. Hudson and Food Services worked on that one.
Yeah, it's a possibility just based off the drivers. We do have a driver shortage right now based off the time that we do run our meal routes. So, but it's something that we'll work out to make work if we have to.
Madam President, Dr. Brown, Mr. Johnson, you still have your license?
It may have expired, I'm not sure.
Can we look at renewing those, Dr. Brown, so we can make up for that shortage?
But as we continue to work with the principals and get their schedules, we will share that with you. We do want to make sure that we do have a well thought out plan before we allow students to come back into the building.
Dr. Brown?
Yes, next, we have spring sports and spring training. Mr. Johnson.
What will be brought before you on Tuesday is Mississippi High School Activity Association has to know whether or not we will be participating in spring sports as well as spring training that will come up in March. So I did provide you with some of the guidelines and some of the information that they put out as it concerns spring sports. Mississippi High School Activity will be operating spring sports statewide. But as they state in their guidelines, it's always a district decision on whether or not to participate.
And for the record, right before I came to this meeting today, board members, Jackson State University was suspending sports because of COVID-19. Just FYI.
Madam President, is that all sports or basketball?
Football.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson, are we testing our basketball players and cheerleaders on a regular basis?
No, not on a regular basis. We do test them as required as an event may come up that would possibly have been exposed to it. We do have them tested in, but we don't subject them to regular testing, no.
And one thing, Dr. Brown, this is for you, and I saw this, I guess it's CDC guidelines, that when we open school, that we will have to test. So we need to keep all that in mind.
Yes, ma'am.
The money part, the safety part. Once we bring people back in the building, we have to do regular testing. So
did the State Department make any references to testing and our COVID-19 daily testing in addition to the testing window for state assessment?
We have not received in any of that information, and what we've shared with our staff is just to be, so we're letting them know to be prepared. We have not received any additional guidance other than to test inside of the buildings, of course, using the 6 feet guidance, all of those things, wearing the mask, but we have not received any additional guidance regarding COVID-19 in tests and state testing.
And so, Dr. Brown, who would administer, the nurses?
The COVID-19 test.
Like if we were testing, who would it be, the nurses at each school?
I'm not sure if our nurses can test.
They would be trained, and of course, Dr. Dobbs, we do have webinars that we do meet on Fridays. One of the things they did as those tests become available, of course, we're not 100% sure if that would be free of cost or if that would be something that we would have to pay for, but those tests could be administered by the nurses. They was looking at some other means of testing besides the nose. They was looking at possibly the saliva test, but of course, the accuracy of the test is always in question. Of course, the nose test is considered more accurate than the saliva test, but that's the test that they probably would be able to provide. But they hadn't really gave us any guidance on whether or not we would receive those tests.
And Dr. Moore, to add to the response to your question, what we can share is what we are, although the state hasn't given us a lot of more information regarding testing, we are creating our schedule for what it may look like in the district and how we could bus our kids in to take the test so that the schools won't be overcrowded and there won't be a lot of students and teachers on the campus, but to also do it, maintain the fidelity of testing.
And as an example, I'm glad you mentioned that. As an example, our tentative schedule allows for a number of days for a particular assessment. So, for example, if we're talking about 3 through 6 ELA, we have about 12 days, about 9 to 12 days in there where we are able to test those students. So we looked at it so that we can stretch it out and be able to limit the number of students. Of course, we want to make sure that they're safe, but get them tested all in that time frame. So
you're looking at stuff like maybe one grade level at a time?
That is
definitely. I'm just asking.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what we're looking at. Testing 3rd grade in this window, testing 4th grade in this window, even considering in order to do it, maybe morning and afternoon testing, as long as we're following those same guidelines, it's okay.
Has the State Department asked for a possible plan of action from each district in regard to the test? Okay.
Other than the normal test security plan, right.
And Dr. Brown, what about as far as when they come back, this new schedule that you gave us is going to be adequate cleaning, right? After
yes,
each?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Next, board members, we have the board calendar, and this is included for you all to review and add or delete what's needed to place on the board agenda during a board meeting. So this is the annual board calendar that was board approved for this current school year.
So board members, if you have something that you want to add or something that you think we need to take out, let us know before, at least by Monday, so we can get it changed. Add or delete. Because Dr. Brown, you remember that caveat I told you about if it's a new board member coming on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Next, we have the financial planning. I know during our last board meeting, Dr. Moore mentioned working with myself and Ms. Washington to do the budget planning for next year. So Ms. Washington gave a proposed work calendar, and Ms. Milton and I worked together. We looked at the dates and tried to revise them so that we could start the planning sooner than what was previously proposed. So this will give you the opportunity to look at some of those dates to see if they work for you, and we will also go back to include the dates for the business office and executive leadership team to meet, as well as the board. But this is just a calendar proposal. And Ms. Washington, if you can go through if you want to just kind of explain each one briefly.
Good evening. Excuse me, is there a page, Dr. Brown?
It was a handout from Ms. Flowers. It's just a one page.
It was at the front of the folder.
Okay, on some of the dates I looked at, and like there's a difference in like your advertisements. You have to have them in a timely manner, so you can't just say push out and approve, and then like the from the date of the actual advertisement, you got a few days to actually take it to the public for a hearing. So I tried to make sure we stayed in line with that. Any of these dates are basically amendable based on circumstances. And I take, for instance, right now, the state legislators are trying to stop their session right now just because of a COVID outbreak. So that would push down days in which they'll actually give us any kind of financial data. They have approved the teachers' pay raises, and I've got to get a report back to the state that tells whether or not we have all our teachers accounted for, so they can determine whether or not, or what our money should look like coming from the legislature for teacher raise. So again, a lot of this data, we don't even have any of it at this point, and that's why actually in like May, your school will start slowing down, and it gives us an opportunity to work harder on the budget. And that's why most of the schedules where those June dates you saw is better for business managers to be able to try to work during that time. But anytime you can work a budget, it doesn't have to be in stone, and you can go ahead and approve it. But it's always amendable, and that's why they give you till the October 15th of the following year to amend those budgets.
Well, Dr. Brown and I call ourselves just being smart to start early, so if we did anything wrong, Ms. Washington, you make sure you tell us, because we want to be right.
Keep an eye on both of them, Ms. Washington.
Okay.
Because you know the date, so we want to be correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Washington.
Next, District Title I funds, Mr. Johnson.
And just for some clarity, I think recently it was released either on the news or in the newspaper about additional Title I funding. What that was actually was the regular Title I allocation that we will be receiving for FY 22, which is the 21-22 school year. I think that was estimated at about $5.5 million. And just to give you an understanding of what that increase, currently this year's allocation was 4.7. So that's about a $800,000 increase that we'll be seeing in Title I funds from this year to next year.
Next, you have copies of the departmental updates.
Just for time's sake, Dr. Brown, can we read these when we get home?
Yes,
If we
ma'am.
have any questions, we'll get back with you.
Next, you have a review of the agenda for the regular board meeting of Tuesday, February the 2nd, 2021. And that includes call to order the approval of the agenda, the superintendent's report. You'll have your reports from your school at risk, and your additional targeted supports and interventions for East and Leflore County Elementary. The regular agenda, approval of the submission of a community facilities grant through North Central Planning and Development District 2021. Mr. Johnson.
What you have is documents that show we will be applying for a grant for the purchasing of 3 school buses for the transportation department as well as a transportation vehicle. And what the grant does is similar to what we did with our SRO vehicles. The grant will pay 75% of the cost of the buses and the vehicle. And so on those next pages, you should see the cost of the new school buses and transportation vehicle. And the district will be responsible for 25% of the cost.
Madam President, if I may, and I just want to talk about the consent agenda that we'll approve if we're there. Dr. Brown, if that's okay? Or you want me to wait? For the upcoming meeting that we'll approve for prior meetings.
Okay.
That's fine? All right, so I ask for a bit of patience, my colleagues, all right? So first, just let me say that it's certainly an honor to work with, I'm not going nowhere, Ms. Mills. It's certainly an honor to work with you phenomenal young ladies on this board, and it is my understanding that the education field in general is female dominant. And according to the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics, fewer than 3% of preschool and kindergarten teachers are men. The National Center for Educational Statistics reported that from 2017 to 2018, 24% of males were teachers in the school district, public school district. And the point that I would like to just simply make is, I did ask Dr. Brown for demographics of employees within our district, and she obliged, and thank you for that, Dr. Brown. But the percentages and the numbers really caught me off guard. And I'll just give you some brief numbers right quick. So of our total employee number of 669 employees, only 168 of those employees are males, which is 25% of the employees in our district. If we look at administrators, 7 of the 31 administrators are males. That's 23%. Principals, 5 of 12 are males. That's 42%. And that's decent. Assistant principals, 3 of 12 are males, which is 25%. If we look at our elementary teachers, 7 of the 35 are males, which is 20%. Our secondary teachers, 13 of 28 are males, 46%, good number. Guidance counselors, 2 of 14 are males, which is about 14%. And in other categories where males are dominant, per se, would be skilled workers and laborers. Now, I can't speak for everybody in here, but that's concerning to me. And I say that in the sense of, I know that we have a teacher recruitment plan for our district, and Attorney Pulley, if it's not discrimination, I would certainly ask that we look at possibly providing some form of incentive where we can recruit more males to our district, just as we do for signing bonuses for new teachers. Also, looking at, I know we talk about growing our own. So we have people in our district that can work their way up the ladder from teacher assistant to a teacher, or from a teacher to a principal to a superintendent or something of that nature. Let's definitely look at it, because I think Frederick Douglass said it's easier to build strong children than repair broken men. That's my time. Thank you.
Kudos to you, Dr. Bailey.
I would like to comment that I thank you for that information, Dr. Bailey. And yes, in most school districts, typically they have more female employees in school districts, but the GLCSD is an equal opportunity employment agency. And when it comes to growing our own, we work to grow every employee in the district. Now, it is up to the employee to do a job, an outstanding job, or one that is effective, and apply for the certifications to be able to apply for some of those positions. And so I will say that I am proud of to have the male representation in the district, But I would encourage the employees to just continue to work hard, continue to not only go after the certifications, but to apply when those positions become available. Now, if there have been any men who have applied for positions, it may have been that the certification in that area was not there, but we do want to say that everybody has an opportunity in the GLCSD. But we will definitely look at those numbers because we do operate using the data, and I'm glad that you did ask about that because we will work to try to recruit more men into the district as well. But thank you. Next, we have approval of the submission of Mississippi Department of Environmental Equality School Bus Replacement Rebate Program Grant Application. Mr. Johnson.
He stepped.
Oh, I'm
He
sorry.
stepped.
Well, this is another grant that Mr. Johnson found, and it helps with paying for, I think they're going to disable, if the board approves us to apply for this one, to come in and disable 3 buses, and then they will provide a certain amount of money for us to help pay for new buses. So I think when I spoke with Mr. Johnson and he was explaining this, with both grants, it was like we were getting we were getting a total of 6 buses for the price of almost 3 buses. Did I do well, Mr. Johnson?
Yes, that was exactly it. This grant would pay for about 25% of the cost of a new bus, and the district would be out of 75%. So with the combination of both grants, the district will be buying 3 buses, which we had budgeted for anyway last year, but we'll be getting 3 additional buses almost at no cost.
Great job.
Next, we have a memorandum of understanding teen pregnancy prevention program. Ms. Coleman has been working with the Delta Health Alliance to get this program up and running, although we're operating in a virtual setting. And what the district is committed to do is to help explain the program to the parents and give the parents the option as to whether they would like their 6th through 12th grade students to participate in this program. And so after speaking with Ms. Coleman and meeting with the Delta Health Alliance, we want to continue that partnership with them, but we want to make sure that the parents do understand that it is some of the subject matter, and let the parents decide whether, because it's in a virtual setting, we're not able to monitor the kids as we would on the campus, give the parents the opportunity to make that decision as well.
So Dr. Brown, is this outside of school hours?
I think some of this is in the afternoons. You know, we have our core courses in the morning, but some is in the afternoon. But I check on to see if anything is after school hours. Next, we have an approval of the Early Learning Collaborative donation. This donation was submitted by Mrs. Ishandra Gary. And I'm not looking at the check, but I think it was a check for about $63,000. And so she had just received this one, I think Ms. Milton and I met Monday afternoon. And so that's a donation. Next, we have the claims docket and financial information for your review. And we have Ms. Washington.
Ms. Washington, I must have misunderstood you the last time when we were here. I thought we were current, you know, on those checks that we see now.
About on the bank rate?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought we were current, like up to at least December.
No, they are still working on those bank rates. I will have some notes for you at the board meeting. so I have those, like I said, I hadn't sent the copies to you yet, but I'll have those before board meeting time. But we do have the consultant back working, with Ms. Cox.
Any questions, board members? I know Dr. Bailey looked at the numbers. Okay, Dr. Brown.
Next, we have the consent agenda, and that includes the minutes of our regular board meeting of Tuesday, January 12th, 2021, the minutes of the special call board meeting of Friday, January 15th of 2021, the minutes of the special call board meeting of Wednesday, January 27th of 2021, and the minutes of the work session of Wednesday, January 27th of 2021. And then you have your personnel recommendations.
Let's see, when y'all would let me go on, I asked were we there. Dr. Brown, you're supposed to tell me no.
Dr. Brown?
Ma'am.
I'm gonna ask on this, the 2019, no, the 2020, 2021 organizational chart, if we could just hold that out since you getting ready to do the February.
Yes, ma'am.
And we could just hold that out until you make your recommendations
Okay.
for. Are you board members okay with that, if we could just hold out this organizational chart until she makes her recommendations for February?
Okay.
Do y'all get what I'm saying? Okay.
And the last thing is the consideration of executive session, board recommendations and discussions, principal recommendations and discussions. And that's all we have, Ms. Milton.
Madam President, I ask a
Yeah.
question. Dr. Brown, in regards to the personnel recommendations,
Okay.
for the two hires under the central office, would those days reflect the overall calendar days for the district or the point in which they were hired?
It's the point in which they
Were hired.
got those
Okay.
positions.
Thank you.
And I think what Dr. Miller sent back, the only reason they're coming back, it was the date, the number of days. We had to make sure it was calculated correctly.
Thank you.
And also, board members, did you all want to put the external provider back for discussion or leave it like it is? Y'all want to bring it back? No? Okay. All right. If nothing else, consider yourselves adjourned. Baby. Oh.